Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're watching Greenwave TV, alternative media television. It is 4/20/2013, 4/20/2013. I have a very important update regarding the suspects. I just put out a report, our last video, on the fact that suspect number 2, senators here in Arizona, people like John McCain and others, are suggesting that these people and the suspects should be labeled an enemy combatant. Therefore giving up his ability to have Miranda rights read to him and get a fair trial, be represented by a jury of his peers, etc. There's also been a lot of reports swirling even into our tip box. People say, Christopher, have you checked out the link between these suspects, the one brother that was killed and now the second suspect, and their link and ties to the FBI? Now, of course, reports came out over the past 48 hours that the FBI had actually interviewed one of the brothers in 2011. That was originally denied by the FBI, but then Russia Today and Russian media countered that and basically provided the evidence. And now the FBI has admitted, let me reemphasize that, has admitted that they interviewed one of these suspects in 2011. So immediately, that's a fact. You can't argue with that. I'll post the links so you can investigate this for yourself here, and I'm going to run through some of these articles here and show you. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's not anything that can be contested. It's a fact. The FBI just admitted it. And we're going to go to that in a moment. Also, contributor Topher Morrison, AMTV contributor Topher Morrison, sent me via tweet a must-read article breaking down the history of the FBI's involvement with terrorists and their foiled bomb plots in years past, how they've been directly involved in actually arming the terrorists here in the United States and abroad and seeing these terror plots to fruition. And I'm going to go through that in a moment. So there's two questions that you need to be asking yourself right now. If we now know it's a fact that the FBI interviewed and was tracking one of these suspects, and according to the mother, who's also been interviewed on Russia Today and other sources, according to her own account, her sons had been followed and her family was being followed by the FBI for years. She also suggested, along with the aunt and the father, that she believes her kids had been set up and that this was a staged terror event. That was the initial gut instinct and the reports that we ran from day one, the moment that these bombs went off. So let's dig into the FBI connection here. And this was sent again by Topher Morrison. And I would agree it is a must-read. This is from the Land Destroyer Report. You can find this at landdestroyer.blogspot.com. This website, some of you may have heard of it, is maintained by a guy by the name of Tony Cartalucci. He's an American geopolitical analyst based in Bangkok, Thailand. And anyways, this is an excellent analysis and provides a lot of the historical reference point and connections to the FBI's involvement in years past and how they've been directly involved in these terrorist attacks against the American people. The title of this article says, FBI casting set stage for Boston Marathon bombing shootout charade. So back to the two questions you should be asking yourself. These are the two specific questions that any person with a critical thinking process should ask. Now that we know it's a fact that the FBI had been following and interviewed one of the brothers and have now admitted that to the press. There's a Wall Street Journal article confirming that. I'm going to show you here in a minute. In fact, why don't you just take a look here? Boston attack renews fear about homegrown terrorism. I'm going to go to that in a minute. That confirms that. The two questions you need to ask are either the FBI is grossly incompetent and grossly inept and cannot stop terrorism in America and on American streets, meaning that they just completely failed because this has been somebody they've been tracking for years, and they've even interviewed one of the suspects. So that is prospect number one. That's question number one, idea number one. So they're either grossly incompetent as an organization, the FBI, in terms of stopping terror on our streets, or they're directly involved in the terrorist act itself. They play and have played a direct role in past terror attacks, but the follow-up question is, well, then they're perhaps directly involved in this particular case itself. They're directly involved perhaps in the Boston Marathon bombing itself. Those are really the one or two options, and those are the two questions you should be thinking, if you haven't already, as a critical thinker and as an investigator investigating these reports. Either gross incompetence and ineptitude to stop terror, because again, they've been tracking and following these individuals for years, according to the family members, and now admitted by the FBI and also sourced by the Wall Street Journal, among many other mainstream and alternative media outlets, or they're directly involved and engaged in this manufactured cover-up and this terror attack against the American people that murdered 3 innocent people, including an 8-year-old child, and wounded and dismembered several dozen others. Now, if we go to the article here, it says there was an update. CBS reveals in their report, CBS News, FBI interviewed Tamerlan 2 years ago. So this has been confirmed by CBS and also the Wall Street Journal. This is CBS Boston. FBI interviewed Tamerlan 2 years ago. Boston attack renews fear about homegrown terrorism. That's been confirmed. The FBI initially attempted to deny any contact prior to the Boston bombings with slain suspect Tamerlan. It was only after Russia's RT publicly pursued the story that the FBI finally admitted officially that it had. So we just caught the FBI in a lie, in a blatant pretense, false pretense, in a falsehood. So they just lied to us, and now they've changed their statement on it and now confirmed that they had in fact been tracking this individual and had interviewed him in 2011. Now the implications are that the FBI knows Russia both possesses information on the case and is prepared to go public with it. For those involved in America's terror racket, now would be a good time to divest. For those involved specifically in the Boston Marathon bombing, now would be a good time to come forward with information. Any and all involved, in whatever capacity, wittingly or unwittingly, stand to become scapegoats in order to save the FBI, DHS, TSA, and other federal agencies clearly engaged in a massive cover-up. Now, this is the opinion of whoever wrote this article. It doesn't say an author, even though we know that the website is maintained by Cartalucci out of Bangkok, Thailand. So the other thing that we need to be thinking about here is if the FBI is involved in the cover-up, and they were a part of arming these terrorists, which they have been in the past, which I'm going to go through those examples, which again, it's factual data. It's unarguable. You can't argue it. These are facts. These are declassified reports, things that the FBI and CIA have admitted to. Now we have the FBI doing the investigation and the follow-up of this case. So think about that. If this is kind of a mob-run situation and it's a part of a larger conspiracy and cover-up, now the FBI has the opportunity to go in and destroy evidence and to basically shift and manipulate and manufacture the story to suit their purposes. Now, this is April 19th. This was written yesterday. It says the Boston police and a slew of reputable mainstream media outlets had reported earlier that the 2 suspects involved in a deadly shootout near Boston and suspected to be involved in the Boston bombings were missing Brown University students Sunil Tripathi and Mike Mulugheta. The International Business Times reported in their article, Boston Marathon bombing, Indian origin, Sunil, etc., etc. So initially, the Boston police, they had actually were targeting and insinuating and labeling specifically other individuals that turned out to have, supposedly, according to the mainstream press and the FBI, nothing to do with this actual terrorist activity. Boston police on Friday revealed the names of 2 suspects in the Boston Marathon bombing, one of whom is an Indian origin person, Sunil Tripathi, reported CBS-affiliated television station WFSB. The other suspect named in the case is Mike Mulugheta. On Friday morning, it was reported that the police arrested one of them. So the question here is, where did CBS hear that Boston police revealed this information? CBS then goes to later blame the entire shift in narrative on social media, and in particular Reddit. Sunil mysteriously disappears in mid-March of 2013, leaving his personal items in his room. The FBI had been involved in the case, as reported by New York Daily News in their article, FBI joins search for Brown University student Sunil, who's been missing for more than a week. So that goes on and on. So here they have, and had targeted originally, suspects that now supposedly have nothing to do with this Boston bombing. Now, the suspects were on the FBI radar for years. Now, I just mentioned that this has now been admitted officially by the FBI. The Wall Street Journal now reports that the FBI had interviewed at least one of the two Boston bombing suspects as early as 2011. In their article, Renewed Fears About Homegrown Terror Threat, the Wall Street Journal reports that the Federal Bureau of Investigation interviewed suspected marathon bomber Tamerlan in 2011 at the request of the Russian government, but didn't find evidence of suspicious activity and closed the case. That was coming from an FBI official, according to the Wall Street Journal. The fact that the FBI spoke with this suspect, who was killed Friday morning, conveniently in a firefight with authorities, is likely to become a focal point of the post-mortem into how the attack was able to be carried out at the Boston Marathon. It also speaks to the challenge faced by authorities as terrorism morphs to some extent from the complex international plots of a decade ago to small-scale attacks carried out by individuals located within the United States. RT would report that the mother of the suspect claimed the FBI had been monitoring her sons for years. I had already mentioned that, etc., etc. You can check that out for yourself. Now, the Wall Street Journal also states that the profile of Boston bombing in many ways resembles a number of the recent foiled plots, a federal law enforcement official said. They have been small with little or no intelligence chatter and have involved suspects who have been in the U.S. for several years and appeared to have assimilated. Now remember, there's a lot of cases of this. There was the case of the underwear bomber not too long ago. I reported on this several months ago. That later was admitted and declassified by the FBI was an FBI staged terrorist event. That they had actually placed him through the FBI. This goes on and has gone on many times before. I'm going to get into some more specific cases here in just a minute. The article goes on to say one thing that the Wall Street Journal is absolutely correct about is that the FBI's involvement prior to the attack will become a focal point of the post-mortem into how the attack was able to be carried out at the Boston Marathon. So here are some of the examples of some of the FBI's direct involvement with terrorist activity and terrorists, whether or not they're foreign or domestic, as Obama likes to say, the lone wolf, homegrown terrorist. Here's a specific example. In late September 2011, AFP reported that a man was charged with planning to fly explosive-packed remote-controlled airplanes into the Pentagon and the Capitol in Washington. In its report, the U.S. man charged with Pentagon bomb plot stated, during the alleged plot, undercover FBI agents posed as accomplices who supplied this terror suspect with one remote-controlled plane, C4 explosives, and small arms that he allegedly envisioned using in a simultaneous ground assault in Washington. However, the public was never in danger from the explosive devices which were controlled by undercover FBI employees. That came from the FBI. That's what the FBI said. This terror suspect was arrested in Framingham near Boston immediately after putting the newly delivered weapons into a stronger container, etc., etc. So that's a specific example. Between May and September of 2011, this terror suspect ordered and acquired the necessary components for his attack plans, including one remote-controlled aircraft that he was going to run into these buildings. And the FBI, what they do is they involve themselves with terrorist activity and with the terrorists themselves, and then in a lot of cases, which has happened historically in the past, actually provide the explosives and provide the bombs that end up killing people. Many examples of this. It goes on to say, if bombs, guns, and grenades sound strikingly familiar to the arsenal allegedly wielded by the most recent terror suspects, the FBI admits it was in contact with since as early as 2011. That is because it is. It's the standard terror playset that the FBI provides its patsies. Now remember, you saw the firefight yesterday. You heard about the other firefight that resulted in the death of one of the suspects, the older brother, the boxer, and then resulted in the escape of the younger brother, which is absolutely unbelievable to think about in this technological age where you've got a camera and you've got the technology to literally spot someone via satellite within 3 seconds. So that part of the story doesn't make any sense. In November 2010, a similar plot was engineered, then disrupted, also by the FBI. Here's a second case, this time in Portland, Oregon. The so-called, some of you probably remember this, Christmas tree bomber attempted to remote detonate a van he believed was filled with explosives provided by the FBI before being arrested during a Christmas tree lighting ceremony at Pioneer Courthouse Square. The FBI's official statement regarding the incident revealed that FBI agents had handled, even detonated live explosives with the entrapped suspect in Lincoln County in the lead up to the final failed bombing. According to the affidavit on November 4, 2010, Mahmoud and the undercover FBI operatives traveled to a remote location in Lincoln County where they detonated a bomb concealed in a backpack as a trial run for the upcoming attack. It goes on and on here. I'm not going to read all this for you, but go ahead and read this. Again, this has resulted, these past cases have resulted where the FBI is supposed to swap out the actual live bombs that they initially give the terrorists. And what has happened in the past is they've failed to actually swap out the materials, and it actually results in the death, in the killing of innocent Americans. The frightening trend of the FBI cultivating otherwise incapable terror suspects, providing them with and detonating real explosives, small arms, and grenades, before giving them inert or controlled devices to carry out attacks on public targets where mass casualties are averted only at the last possible moment, sets the stage for the very least, incredible potential for catastrophic blunders and, at worst, false flag attacks. And remember, this explains and helps to explain how these suspects, suspect 1 and 2, allegedly responsible for the attack in Boston, had all of this weaponry, had grenades and all these explosives on them, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But does this mean the FBI is capable of turning such operations live, resulting in real terror attacks and loss of life? Has the FBI ever presided over sting operations that were actually carried out? The answer to that is yes. Here's another example. The FBI, in fact, was presiding over the terrorists who carried out the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. This was actually mentioned by myself and Topher Morrison in a contributing report. In fact, I was really upset because that report actually crashed. The computer in that file crashed when we were actually talking about this a few days ago. The role of the FBI leading up to the deadly attack would most likely have gone unreported had an FBI informant not taped his conversations with FBI agents after growing suspicious during the uncover operation. The New York Times in their article, Tapes, depict proposal to thwart bomb used in Trade Center blast. So here's an example that the FBI was directly involved in, which is now declassified fact, declassified information where it resulted in the actual bombing and the actual deaths and injuries of a lot of different people. It says here the account, which is given in the transcript of hundreds of hours of tape recording Mr. Salem secretly made of his talks. Mr. Salem is the gentleman who allegedly bombed the World Trade Center in 1993, equipped by the FBI, secretly made of his talks with law enforcement agents, so he recorded their conversations. The FBI didn't know he did this. Portrays the authorities as in a far better position than previously known to foil the February 26 bombing of New York City's tallest towers. The explosion left 6 people dead, twice more than what died in Boston. 6 people died and more than 1,000 people injured, in damages in excess of $500 million. I want you to think about that for a minute. This is now declassified fact, declassified truth, that the FBI had direct involvement with this terrorist, Mr. Salem, in 1993 that blew up the World Trade Center and set off a bomb that left 6 people dead, twice the amount of people killed a few days ago in Boston, and more than 1,000 injured and damages in excess of $500 million. So this article goes on and on. I'm not going to read the entire thing to you, but basically it provides a history of the FBI's direct involvement with domestic terrorism and with terrorist patsies themselves, and how they've actually equipped and helped to kill innocent Americans. Now remember, it's the FBI that's supposedly investigating this current case in Boston. And the question that Americans need to ask themselves is, do we trust the FBI? Do we trust what these people are telling us? They just lied to us. Now they've admitted that they had actually been in contact with the suspects, at least one of them in 2011. So this means one or two things. It either means, let me reemphasize, gross incompetence on behalf of the FBI, meaning that they were in contact with this individual, had been tracking him for years. The mother also mentions this and confirms this report. In addition to the Wall Street Journal and CBS News, among many other sources, this means that the FBI is either unable to stop terrorism here in America and are an inept and grossly incapable unit and terror prevention unit, or the even more damning, they're directly involved in the terrorist activity itself. They are directly involved, as the cases I just mentioned to you with the 1993 terror bomber Semil at the World Trade Center. They're directly involved in the terrorist activity. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Do you understand what that means? That would mean that the FBI and the federal government here in the United States is responsible for murdering innocent Americans. Perhaps and potentially have killing those 3 people that lost their lives in Boston and the dozen of other people that were completely dismembered and their lives potentially ruined forever. So please get this story out to as many people as you can. I mean, I can't come up with any more damning evidence and sourcing for this, and we'll keep with this story. And again, I'm checking our tip line regularly. We've gotten thousands of emails over the past few days. Again, save this article, print it, get it out everywhere on the internet. Just make sure to source it. I'm sure you can contact the Land Destroyer Report yourself, but make sure you keep copies of this on your hard drive. Here's the report from CBS the FBI admitting that they interviewed Tamerlan. Let me reload the page here. Admitting that they interviewed him. I don't know why we just went to unavailable. And here is the Wall Street Journal report. Boston attack renews fears about homegrown terrorism. So in closing, to me, this is incredibly suspicious. It's been suspicious from the get-go. And this honestly confirms some of our worst fears. And actually, in a lot of respect to me, proves the FBI's involvement. It does prove the FBI's involvement. The question is the FBI either an inept organization and completely incompetent in terms of preventing these types of terrorist attacks, or are they directly involved in it? And if that's the case, if they're directly involved in it, and just the fact that we have this probable cause would tell me that the FBI should be investigated by local authorities literally right now. I mean, if the local authorities cared about the truth and cared about the investigation, they should be storming offices and storming the FBI and storming the Pentagon and storming these organizations like the FBI that potentially played a role in the bombing a few days ago. I also want to leave you with something else that has really resonated with me and has resonated probably with a lot of you over the past few days. Boston was under a state of complete martial law over the past few days. Complete and utter martial law because of this individual, allegedly, and his brother. There was only one person on the loose. And literally, there was firefights going on in the streets of Boston. There were tanks and SWAT teams and all kinds of just craziness. Let's go to Google here for a minute so I can show you this so that you can actually see it. Boston bombing. This is probably going to hopefully show some of those pictures. But just the police state. Let's see if I can go here. Police state. Martial law. I'm trying to get some of the images. Here's one of the images. There was tanks. Maybe I'll post-produce it. Here's another image, etc. Imagine what America would look like if there was more than one terrorist on the loose. Imagine if it was a dozen terrorists. Or imagine if, go as far as to think for a minute, if we were invaded by, say, North Korea or some other country. We just witnessed Boston literally in a state of martial law where they literally went into your homes. See this picture here, went into your homes without a warrant, with tanks and SWAT team opening up firefights, throwing grenades for one guy, for this guy, for one guy. A total state of martial law in America. This is just a taste of what you can expect going forward in the future. This is just a taste. Again, imagine if it was 12 terrorists, domestic or foreign, in the United States that had blown up, let's say, 12 different locations. We would have a complete militarization of America, a complete militarization of every street, every city. And I want you to think about that for a moment. So from a perspective of the terrorists themselves, whether or not it was this guy or it was his brother or it was somebody else or it was the FBI's direct involvement, you've got to honestly think about the fact that this was an incredibly successful terrorist attack. It was incredibly successful because it just created enormous fear, militarized Boston, created a police state where the cops searched and seized your home without warrant. So whoever the perpetrators are and whoever the terrorists were, honestly, were very successful in their planned attack. The question I want you to think about, and I want us all to investigate further, is the FBI responsible for this? There's a video here I haven't watched yet. It says manufactured terrorism. The FBI fosters, funds, and equips American terrorists. Again, I'm not making this stuff up. These are all examples, specific examples that I just cited to you that are fact, not fiction, cannot be argued, cannot be said are a crackpot conspiracy theory. It is the truth, my friends, and it's incredibly damning, it's incredibly serious, and it's incredibly dangerous. Again, not my opinion. CBS, the Wall Street Journal, this excellent opinion piece, and basically investigative report by the Land Destroyer. I want to thank Topher Morrison for bringing this to my attention. I've got a report by him coming out in just a moment. Please get this out everywhere. Save it to your hard drives. Repost it. Mirror it. You have my permission to do it. Let's get this to 1 million plus people or more. Let's get the truth out. Let's make sure we get a proper investigation, that we don't let this slide, that we are asking the pertinent, relevant questions, that we're doing critical thinking, and that we are acting, as I always say, as the watchdog to the mainstream media, these politicians, Wall Street, and any other group of people that has such a tremendous influence over the psyche of the average American and that are able to manipulate public perception and opinion. It is so important. Thank you so much. I'm Christopher Green. Get this out everywhere. Hard hitting and in your face.